I'm going to be in Colossians. We're going to start off in Colossians chapter 1. You got your Bibles this morning. Colossians chapter 1. We looked at this verse last week, and then I took a sidebar and never really got to the message, but I really felt like it was a word from God that we ended up sharing last week. But I'm going to start with this verse again in Colossians chapter 1, verse 27. To whom God would make known what is the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. Now, how did that come about? How is it that Christ is in us? I know Paul says in Galatians 2:20, it is no longer I who lives, but it's Christ who lives within me. So how did that come about? Well, Jesus prophesied that in John chapter 14, where he says, I go and prepare a place for you. And we've looked at that several times in John 14, where he says, I go and prepare a place for you. And they said, Lord, where are you going? He says, you know where I'm going. And he said, we don't know where you're going. Well, when he says, I go and prepare a place for you, where I'm going, there you will go with, you will be also. And then we've looked at that. But how did he become part of us? 1 Corinthians 6:17 says that he who has joined the Lord is one spirit. How did that come about? Because we don't, we can say Christ in us, the hope of glory, but if we don't know how that came about, are we just mimicking something that we really don't have any understanding of? But when Jesus said, I go and prepare a place for you, he said, in my Father's house are many mansions. And that word of mansions is abode, and so it's not actually buildings. A lot of people have a problem with trying to understand heaven. And God, for instance, let me just say this. The Bible says God has eyes to see, but a spirit doesn't have eyes. God says that to Israel, your burnt offerings are a stench to my nostrils. Does he have a nose? Does he have eyes? He hears the cries of Egypt, or the Israelites in Egypt. Does he have ears? He doesn't have eyes. He doesn't have ears. He doesn't have a nose. But yet the Bible gives us that understanding, because it's to reduce God to our understanding is why and there's a real long name for that, why the writers do that, or why God inspired them to say that, to give you an understanding of God. How would he be able to relate to you that he hears, sees, and smells if he doesn't use those bodily images? But he's a spirit. He does not have eyes. He doesn't have ears. He's a spirit. And on the same token, why would God need streets of gold? Why will angels, if they got wings, which I don't believe they do, I don't know, the cherubim's got wings. Do they fly around? Probably. Am I going to have wings? I don't think so. But there's so much not taught in the Bible concerning these things. So streets of gold is just a way to describe to you the glory and the majesty that's in the realm of God. There's no buildings. God's not building a mansion for you, because we find out in that same chapter of John, verse 23, where that abode is. It's not mansions. He said, when I go to the Father, this is his resurrection, then he says, I will come back, which is the Holy Spirit in Acts chapter 2. When I come back, I and the Father, by way of the Holy Spirit, that's the Trinity, will make our home in you. Paul says we're the temple of the Holy Spirit now. God inhabits us. That's the dwelling place. Our placement in the Godhead. That's how Christ is in us. Through the born-again experience, we're born of the Spirit. Christ comes into us with the Father by the Spirit, and they make their home in us. So you're the walking tabernacle of God. God says he doesn't. When David wanted to build him a temple, God says, I don't dwell in temples, but I'll let you do that. And then he did there for a while in the temple, but it was only a type and shadow of the temple that we would become, because he makes our habitation in us. He couldn't do that before because we were unholy. Christ had to deal with the sin issue. So when Christ deals with the sin issue, he makes us holy for God to inhabit us. That's why he spilled the blood. We are made worthy by the blood of the Lamb. So now we are people that can be inhabited by God through faith. So that's how we get to this in Colossians 1:27, Christ in you, the hope of glory. Now, this has to be a revelation. This cannot be taught. You've got to get a revelation of it. Because if you really understand what took place in the church, in you, or in man 2,000 years ago at the resurrection of Jesus, I'm going to make a statement to you, and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt it's not going to move anybody. But I'm going to mention it anyway to show you how far removed we are of a truth that should excite us, but it won't change us, and we won't even put a smile, won't even put a grin on our face. And I'm only doing this to show you how far removed we are of the truth. Now, I'm going to make this statement. This is the most incredible day on the earth. This is the most exciting time that God has given us. This is an exciting day. This is a glorious day. We're waiting for a glorious day, but we're living in one. Now, if I say to you that this is the most exciting time to be alive in the history of God, how would you respond to that to yourself? Like, I don't know how excited it is to me. Same old day. The alarm went off. We got the kids together. We did this. Ate. We're here. I don't know how that could be that exciting. Well, does the Bible say this is the day that the Lord has made? What's the rest of that say? We shall what? Rejoice. But we wake up, oh God, especially on Mondays. Tomorrow is Monday. And we're going to wake up, oh man, here we go again. I do that. So this is how far removed I am. But why is it that I can't wake up every day if I believe that this is the day He's made it? This is a day He has made. Nothing He makes is bad. Every good and perfect gift comes from heaven. Our days are gifts, life here on earth that we are to rejoice in. So if He made this day, He made this week. He made this month. And He made 2015. Why are we not rejoicing and being glad in the very thing He has made? Now, I can't worry about the generation before me. I wasn't alive. I don't know about them. And I'm not concerned about the generation that comes after me. I can't do nothing for them except what I'm doing now. Hopefully, what I'm doing now is discipling the nations, as that's what Jesus called us to do, to pass the torch on to this next generation coming up, your kids. They're going to be that generation after us. But I'm going to be gone. I'm going to be dead. So all I can be concerned about is what God is doing today. And He told me this is the day He's made. He's given me life. He breathed life into me. I'm alive today, and we're going to borrow from Esther for such a time as this. Until we understand that, we are never going to get off that gerbil wheel. The church is stuck on a cycle. They're stuck on the mundane, and they don't recognize their appearing in this generation. The fact that God put you here, and what it means to be in Christ, what it means to share in that glory and get that glory manifested through us, and being light and salt. We're on this wheel, this cycle. 52 weeks out of the year, we just go through this cycle, and nothing is taking place. And the Bible says in Daniel one of the things the devil does is wears down the saints of God, beats us, wears us down with the mundane, with the daily grind, to where we are just living an existence. I'm not living an existence. I'm fulfilling a destiny. That's a big difference. Let me tell you something else I'm getting tired of that's going to change. I'm tired of the messages on your ability to survive. We ought to be over that. I understand that there are going to be times, it's going to be your own fault, but there are going to be times that you let loose the grip of faith, and you're going to look at your situations and circumstances, and they're going to drag you down. And you're going to have to hear a pretty boy on TV tell you you can make it. Okay? We need that. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. But are you tired of the survival messages of get through? You know, God's there to get you through. I mean, if that's what you want to diet on, and if that is, that's because you are not taking the responsibility and being awakened to who you are in Christ. Do you think Jesus needed those survival messages? I remember back in 1993, 1994, and it's a valid message. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But I got this message, obtaining a survivor's spirit. And that was in contrast to people just giving up. I mean, you know, we had people giving up. So you need a survival spirit. So you don't give up. But you don't stop at a survival spirit. Then I went on with another message. This is probably 1994, obtaining a warrior spirit. I just don't want to be a survivor. I want to be one who rules and reigns. Big difference in whether you're trying to take the land or you got the land. Right? So can we graduate from survival messages of making it another day, making it another week, getting through a situation, getting through a circumstance? You know, Judah had the ability to rule and reign, the scepter to rule and reign. Christ is from the line of the tribe of Judah. He had the ability to rule and reign. And he left us that ability. He gave us power and authority to do what with? To survive or to reign? Are you surviving or are you reigning? Big difference. Huge difference. I don't want to survive. See, I got to be honest with you. And this is the deal. You can't get this message hardly anywhere on TV. And you can't get it from people you know, a lot of people you're around, maybe a few, but it's like their leaven is leavenizing us, that all we're trying to do is, and you hear this, how you doing? Oh, I'm surviving. You got to get through this day, brother. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man, I hear you. You just got to, you know, I'm under the weather. I'm dealing with this, or I'm working on this, or I'm trying. And I don't know what it's going to take, except maybe just well, I know what it's going to take. There's going to have to be a paradigm shift within us that says, you know what? I'm not reigning on this earth. I am surviving on this earth. I'm barely getting by. That is not reigning. A king doesn't barely get by. He is taking control over his life. Does that make sense? I don't have it written down, and I was going to go next week with this, but I'm going to give you the scripture. I wasn't planning on hitting it from this angle, but let me give you the scripture. Romans 5:17. And it says something along the lines. I don't have it written down. I don't have a Bible. I don't have a Bible. My scriptures are on the iPad. That's why I don't have a Bible. Let's see. Romans 5:17. Something along the lines of receiving. He who receives the abundance of grace will reign in this life. Is that what it is?
What if because of one man's trespasses death reigned? Through that one man, much more will those who receive the abundance of grace and the free gift of righteousness reign in life through one man, Jesus Christ.
But basically, through the abundance of grace, through Jesus and the gift of righteousness, we shall reign in this life. Not survive. Grace is not given to survive. Grace is given to reign. And so, which means this. You ought to be ruling and reigning over every area of your life. The kingdom. In other words, if we are receiving the kingdom, and the kingdom of God is within us, Christ in us, the hope of glory, and we are to rule and reign, what are we doing under our situations and circumstances? We ought to be ruling over poverty, ruling over sickness, ruling over addictions. But we've got people, and now this is not condemnation, because the message isn't there. I don't blame the people. I blame the leaders who are not delivering us with, opening our eyes to this revelation. I was going to say this too at the end, but I'm going to say it now. Here's a trend. And it is at the end of every message, and you guys know this to be true. At the end of every message, whether it's TV or you're in a church setting, at the end of the message, the preacher wants to pray over you, right? He'll even have an altar call. He'll want to lay a hand on you. And he'll want to cast something out of you. He'll want to speak something into you. He'll want to do, he'll bind this, he'll loose that, he'll whatever. Whatever. I wasn't going to say that. Because I was watching TV this morning. I had a half an hour to kill. I was just relaxing, and I saw this guy on TV doing that. And I never saw this before, but it hit me as soon as I saw it. Why do we do that? If Christ is in me, the hope of glory, why do I need somebody to do the work for me when it was already done 2,000 years ago? Now, there's nothing wrong with the guy praying what Christ has done over you to open your eyes, or to agree with you in the prayer of what was done 2,000 years ago, or enter into a time of praise of what's been done. I'm not going to I deliver you. I bind that alcohol addiction. It's already been bound. Now here's the analogy, or here's the illustration. Let's say that I'm part of the Marines or Army or whatever, and I'm called to go into an area to set POWs free out of, say I was in Vietnam, and I went over to the POW camp. We snuck in there, and we spied them out. We figured it out, came up with a plan, a strategy, and we set those guys free out of POW camps, right? Now, do I walk in there and start doing these mental gymnastics of, I'm here to set you free? Now, everybody close their eyes, and everybody, I'm going to tell you right now, I am going to lay hands on or does the guy go and say, you're free? He's declaring what was already done. The guys came in there, either killed everybody, bombed them, whatever they did was already done before the guys could walk out of there, right? Well, Jesus gave us the perfect illustration of that when he said that when the strong man is bound, you go in and plunder his goods. But if the strong man's not bound, you can't plunder his goods. Jesus bound the strong man 2,000 years ago, right? Satan is bound. He's bound. Revelation 20 says he's on a stinking chain. So he doesn't deceive the nations anymore. So he's bound. Well, I thought that was for the millennium. Well, there's your skewed eschatology. He's bound now. So he can't deceive the nations. So the glorious truth of the gospel of grace can go forth and people can get saved. So he's bound. So what I need to do is just start declaring, you're free. I don't need to fast. We don't need to fast for deliverance. We don't need to pray and fast for whatever it is in your life that needs. The devil has been bound. Christ has been revealed. The work has been finished. This is what it is. The guy walks in the POW camp and makes this statement. Folks, you're free. Let's go. That's all he does. Nothing more needs to be done, because those guys, those Vietnamese guys or whoever, are either dead or they ran off. They're free to go. There's nothing I will do to get them. I mean, can you imagine, guys? I don't know. Are you serious? Is there something else we need to do to be able to walk out of here? I just can't believe it's that easy. We just walk out of here. You guys killed them all? Christ said in Luke chapter 4 that he came to preach the gospel and to set at liberty those that are captive. So the good news is, in the life of a believer, there is no such thing as addictions. I got one! You're believing a lie. I came, and well, Christ came as you're in this. There's many Christians still in POW camps, bound by unforgiveness, bound by bitterness, bound by alcohol, bound by drugs, bound by lust, bound by sex, bound by all kinds of things. Now, either Christ set us free or He didn't. It's that easy. But what's our job? Is to illuminate that to people, because obviously they don't know that yet. They're in a survival mode. They're fighting an addiction. The battle's already been won. They're not reigning. They're surviving, or they're quitting. Big difference in the messages today. I know of a particular guy every week. He's on TV. Every day he's on TV just getting you by. I mean, people jump up and down, shout, hoot and holler, and do basically everything but jump a pew. But if he's really doing his job, they should be ruling and reigning. He wouldn't have to come and give these survival messages all the time. And I'm talking about T.D. Jakes, if you don't know. Those are all survival messages. And I'm just saying, okay, that's all great, man, because I need that once in a while. But more than that, and again, when I want to give up, I'm going to need a survival message. But more than that, show me a guy on TV, and I know one, but show me a guy on TV that's preaching a ruling and reigning message. When's the last time you heard the message on the manifestation of the sons of God that we did how many weeks on? There's not very many that are ruling and reigning. So therefore, maybe that's why the message, maybe they're not ruling and reigning. Maybe they haven't had their eyes awakened to. I mean, I don't want to be in a POW camp and all we do is talk about how we're going to get out of here. I don't know, maybe we need to try this. Maybe we need to try that. And for years and years we're in that hut trying to get out, or trying to figure out how we can overcome these guys. When all along you can walk out there anytime you want. Isn't that what? I mean, I know that's ludicrous, and that's taking the illustration, really in a fantasy realm. But really think about it. Can you imagine these guys for years trying to strategize how to get out of the POW camp, and months earlier, we bombed the guys. They're gone. We're still trying to figure out how to get out. Jesus bound, either we don't believe Jesus bound the strong man, Satan. And we know the Bible is clear. He made a public spectacle of him. He took the keys of hell, death, and the grave. And we're free. And that's all Paul was trying to preach in the New Testament. It was for freedom. Galatians 5:1. It was for freedom that Christ set you free. So either you're free or you're not. So can you understand when I say there's no such thing as an addiction within a believer? If Christ came to set us free, why am I still in a POW camp? Either I'm free or I'm not. Either Christ's work is finished or I'm still trying to work on how to get delivered by laws, principles, and steps and keys. No, it's a revelation of who you are in Christ and what He did on the cross that you've got to believe. And then you begin ruling and reigning. Or you just want to be a survivor. Now, one of the greatest revelations we can have is Christ in us, the hope of glory. Getting back to Colossians 1:27. One of the greatest revelations that we can have is Christ in us, the hope of glory. And Jesus has brought a revelation of His person to unveil inside of His body, us being the body of Christ. That life of Jesus is resurrection itself. That life of Jesus is resurrection itself. It's not about God. It's not about God. It is God. It's about Jesus. It's about God. It's not about a theory or a subject. And that life is present now in His body, us. He's not up there and we're trying to get it. We have it. We just haven't been experiencing it. We may have a head knowledge of it, but we don't have an experiential life of it, a manifestation of it. Somewhere there's a disconnect. If you got it here, it's got to somehow. I mean, if you use a pipe, doesn't all a pipe is to bring water through. Well, doesn't the pipe get wet? How is it that we're preaching something that we ourselves aren't experiencing? Out of your belly shall flow what? Rivers of living water. Why aren't we getting wet? If Christ is in me, why am I not experiencing that life? Or does he just bypass me and I'm doing everything else for people? I'm delivering people with the message, not me personally, but with the message, people's eyes are opening up, but what, I'm not getting wet? Yeah, you are supposed to experience this. The body acts like and teaches on TV and in most churches that God is in another place, out in heaven somewhere, and you got to get to him, or you got to get him to come to you. And it's all about, it's never out of oneness. It's not about Christ in us, the hope of glory. 140 times, Paul, who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament, keeps talking about in him, of him, in whom. He understood Christ in us, the hope of glory. It's about the finished work. And there's nothing to try. I said at the men's thing this past week, I said all triers are liars. If somebody's saying, I'm trying to believe, I'm trying to get delivered, I'm trying to get this, I'm trying to do that, they're lying. Because you don't get it by trying. You're not going to get it. You're never going to get it by trying. You're going to get it by trusting in what he's already done in you. That's where it's at. In other words, I'm not trying to get to God. God got to me. 2,000 years ago in Christ, he came and he said in 14:23, we're making our abode in you. I'm not going to try to get there. I'm one with him. Is that your car? God's done it all. There's nothing else that needs to be done. And we got to understand that. Was that you? There's nothing else that needs to be done. What are we waiting for? You know what the problem the survivor spirit is? I'm waiting for someone to save me. That's what a survivor does. If I'm in a boat and the boat sank and I'm on that what's that thing called you float on? That thing they throw you, that round thing. Lifesaver. What am I doing on that lifesaver in the middle of the ocean? Number one, I'm surviving a boat crash. And I'm waiting to be rescued. So if I have a survivor spirit, I'm waiting to be saved. Because that guy's out there surviving in the middle of the ocean. Would you rather be the would you rather be the Coast Guard ruling and reigning the waves, or the guy on that life preserver surviving? I want to save people with the message of grace. I don't want to be the one needing to be saved. How long are we going to go with this? Paul said to the Hebrews, you guys ought to be teachers by now, but you're still on that life raft out there. You can't save anybody because you need to be saved. Big difference. So the person of Jesus in us, in power, is alive inside of us, inside the church, this body, Christ in us, the hope of glory. It's resurrection power living inside of you. Power. Power. If you've got dynamite in you, power, what are you doing surviving? You should be ruling and reigning with that power. Jesus says, I've given you power and authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy. No survival spirit here. We're ruling and reigning. Now let me ask you, there's a question you have to ask yourself. and I think I said this last week. If someone would ask you what the gospel is, how would you define it? You don't have to, just think about it. How would I define the gospel? If someone says, what's the gospel? How would I define it? I was listening to this guy, and God asked him this question. He said, what's the gospel? He said, I gave God what I thought the answer was. And he said, and I didn't hear anything. So I thought, wrong question, wrong answer. God asked, okay, Lord, what is the gospel? And he's sitting there waiting, and what comes to him was nothing. It was not what he said. So he knew it wasn't him coming up with this in his head. And this is how it came across. God said to him, the gospel is the power of God. He said, then it stopped. He's waiting. God doesn't finish it because he says, I know Romans 1:16. The gospel is the power of God unto salvation. It begins to tell you other things, what the gospel is. He said, but God didn't finish it like Romans did. All God said was, here's the gospel. The gospel is, in a nutshell, is this: the power of God. Now, I said this several weeks ago, is that where is the supremacy of God in preaching today? There is no supremacy of God in preaching. In fact, John Piper, back in 1990, maybe 92, I bought the book in 92. Isn't it funny how I can remember when I buy books? That's when you know when a book unpacks you. But there's a lot of books I don't know when I bought because I read it and went, what? Flipped it. And the book was called The Supremacy of God in Preaching. And I read that book and it impacted me, and I thought, there it is. This is back in 92. Where is the preaching today of our God reigns? This is what Christ did on the cross, and we are seated in heavenly places, and all the messages have to be designed to show off God's power. But it's not. You know what the message is? To show off your power, your ability, your willpower, your self-effort. That's all. There's no supremacy. There's no power of God today being released or preached or anything. In fact, what did I tell you yesterday? The message is telling you all the deep darkness that covers the earth. Oh, we got to get ready. We got these 4 blood moons going on, and all hell's going to break loose. You got to get water. You got to get a 30-day food supply. You got to get this. Where is the supremacy of God in that? Where is it that God is reigning, not the Antichrist or the economy, or God? Our God reigns, not what the devil is doing. Since when does the devil win? And these messages, and they're all over Christian television. Especially your end-time prophecies. The prophets, their end-time messages skewed with this doom and gloom. That they'll tell you that I read we win in the back of the book. You know, at the end of the book of Revelation, we win, but the only way we win is when we get raptured out of here. That's how we win. We're going to give the earth over to the Antichrist, and communism, and Muslims, and all this radical stuff. We're going to get us out of here, God. Is that how you win? That rapture theory's got to go, folks. I'm telling you. It's not. It only came in the 19th or the 18th century, or the 19th century. Nobody knew that message prior to that. But that's going to get out of here one day. Going to get out of here, and then we don't train people to rule and reign because someone's going to save us. The church is the way the people preach today. The church is on that life preserver, and we're going to get raptured out of here. We're floating around in the devil's, destruction and doom and gloom and darkness. Get us out of here. It's the wrong message. It's got to be a message where God reigns, Jesus wins. And the Bible says, Paul says, he causes us to triumph in all things. Where is the triumph? You tired of losing? Remember a couple weeks ago, and I felt it was prophetic because it wasn't where I wanted to go a couple weeks ago when I said you're the head, not the tail. Getting wagged all over the place by people and events and things and situations. But the gospel is the power of God. It's the person of Christ, Jesus, alive in us in resurrection power. That's the good news. You don't need anything other than the power of resurrection that's in you. What are you going to the world for? Trying out these steps and secrets and keys. Here's the question. Now here's where we go. That's my introduction. Why are so many people have a woe is me mentality? Christians, get on Facebook, remember we talked about this, and watch all the woes. Woe is me, this is happening. Woe is me, that is happening. And it's complaining and murmuring. Why is so many woes? It's woe about this nation. Woe about our government. Woe about the world. Woe, woe, woe. That's all we hear about. I have no money. I got a bad marriage. I got rebellious kids. I can't find a job. I basically hate my life. That's what you hear. I can understand that from a non-believer. But when I hear that from a Christian, I want to sit there and go, where do you even begin with someone like you? How do you even unravel this onion? They're so deeply layered in confusion and unbelief. Where do you begin with someone who talks like this? Where did you go to church at? What are you not listening to? Now, we all get in the ups and downs of life. Don't hear what I'm not saying. But when you got somebody rooted in that kind of negativity and they can't get out of it, man, where do you begin? But why is that? Here's the problem. You ready for this? Listen carefully. The problem is people are looking at their circumstances. They are letting the environment they're living in dictate how they feel. I want to say that again. The problem is, these woes, is because people are looking at their circumstances. They're letting the environment dictate how they feel. They think what they're going through is what they've got to believe for. Don't let that go over your head. I'll say it again. They think what they're going through is what they've got to believe God for. In other words, if I'm going through sickness, then I got to believe God for healing. But I'm identifying with the sickness. That's why I'm going to God for healing. I may not have enough money, so I'm going to God for provision. You're like, great, that's what I've been raised all my life to believe. Huh? I don't have any money, so you've got no money, what do you do? Pray. What you are going through is where God has you to demonstrate Himself. Now, you may want to have to go back, get on the internet and go back and re-listen to this because you've got to meditate on this. You've got to meditate on this. Let me give you an example. When I say that what you're going through right now is not as bad and you're not completely, it's where God has you to demonstrate something. Remember, what is the gospel? It's the power of God. Now watch this. Now you say you are a coach. We talked about it a little bit this last week. You're a coach of a football team. And you're having them run their drills. And they're running their laps, they're practicing, they're throwing, they're kicking, they're tackling, they're doing all their plays. And they're going over it and over it and over it again. Now what's the purpose of that? Because they're going to get on the field and demonstrate who they are, what they have become in the practices. Now, those guys don't walk out on the football field. You played football. You did not walk out in the football field going, oh, woe is us. What are we doing out here on this football field? I don't want to be here. Why is this happening to me? Why did He put me in? No, you can't wait to get out there and demonstrate who you people are made of. This requires a huge paradigm shift. Something's got to change in your lens. You gotta quit looking at the lack or this or that. Oh my God, what's going on? And you complain and you murmur and you go to God in that survival mode. Can you see I'm down here on the life preserver in poverty, God? In sickness, God? And we wait for God to give me money to pay my bills. He's the Coast Guard who came by and picked me up, but next week I'm going to get another boat and be out here again because I ain't going to be able to pay my bills next week either. And I just got over the flu, and now the cold. This is the cold season, the flu season. One thing after another. You know this is where you live. Life is full of games where you're going to have to show up and play. And what you're doing, remember, God, God's got you in that situation to demonstrate His power. What did he say to Pharaoh? I raised you up for this purpose, to show forth my power. Now, if he could take a guy he doesn't really care too much about, it's what we get out of Romans 9, just to display His power and glory. How is God able to display His power and glory if He don't put you in situations that He can display His power and glory? But He doesn't really put you in those situations. This is what the world is giving us on a day-to-day basis. The world is about making you poor. The world, the devil, is out to steal, kill, and destroy and make you sick. So God's not putting you in these things, but you are in these things to demonstrate who you are in Him, and the gospel is the power of God. And either you let the resurrection power flow out of you and change your atmosphere, change your situation and circumstance, or you wallow around in it. But you got to know who you are. In other words, the situation, circumstances show off the riches of His glory. If you're in a divorce, why am I in a divorce? God, what's going on here? Well, the first thing is God may demonstrate reconciliation, the power of reconciliation. And if it's not possible, because it takes two to tango, but if it's not possible and the other one doesn't want to reconcile, then I can now release the power of God for a new beginning. Bottom line, I win either way. Because He causes me to triumph in everything. I am not going to let a divorce, what somebody else does to me, puts me in a situation, and like that's going to be the end of me, then I don't know who I am. Now I can moan the blues, woe is me, and God will give you that little bit of grace to do that. But sooner or later He's going to come and say, you know what? Get up and move on. Isn't that what He did to Moses when Moses came up against the Red Sea? He's like, what am I going to do? God finds Moses on the ground. And God says, stand up and see the salvation of your Lord. Raise that staff. Boom, the Red Sea splits. And I'm saying, I don't know what you're going through, and God will give you a little bit of time to wallow around in it, because we all do it. But let's not live there. Let's get our eyes open to who we are and overcome the thing that's in front of us. If your finances are down, He's there to demonstrate the riches of Christ Jesus. He became poor that you might become rich. So don't look at, oh, here we are at the end of the month. No. Okay, God, Christ in me, the hope of glory, is going to change this, and you're going to provide. If you're sick in body, God is there to demonstrate His healing virtue. See, God is shifting our understanding from a detached commitment to a God we really don't experience to the experience of God who put us in Jesus, who was resurrected in power, and we are experiencing that in the here and now, not some future thing. Here's an example of detachment. Watch this. Listen. Here's an example when I say we're detached, and I got to hurry up here. People think if they have a problem, you pick up the Bible for the answer to that problem. And God will give you the answer and fix your problem. That's everywhere. It's notorious with your faith teachers. Get on TV, a guy's going to point out your problem, give you a remedy that comes out of the Bible, have you work that remedy, or even this. You have a problem, you're sick, I'm going to find a promise in the Bible, and then I got to believe that promise. I've got to confess that promise, and then I get healed. Is that the message you hear? And up to this point, you're going to go, I don't understand what is wrong with that. The greatest problem, let me just say this before I tell you the greatest problem. Jesus never gave us promises for him to answer. You're in a survival mode when you go to the Bible for promises to fix what you're going through. That's a survival. That's not a person who rules and reigns. That's a person looking for help. Thinking that they can grab a promise and God's going to answer that promise. That's detaching yourself from God. You're the guy in the POW camp hoping someone comes and saves you. You're a guy in bad finances hoping God will come and give you something. You're a guy who's sick and hoping that Jesus will come and heal you. Huh? Now watch. Here's the greatest problem Christianity has. Preachers try to find human conflict. Their whole message is about human conflict. And the guy I mentioned earlier is all about your conflicts. I watch him. I'm not lying. I watch him more than you do. I tape him just to see what he's doing. He's on my DVR right now if y'all want to go to my house. He is describing your conflict. And then he's going to get a promise. He's going to get you excited about what God's going to do to fix your conflict. And that's the cart before the horse. As I was telling you about, this whole thing is the cart before the horse stuff. If you can take these guys' messages and turn it around, they're fine. But they've got the cart before the horse. Now let me say it again. The greatest problem Christianity has is preachers try to find human conflict, find an answer, preach that answer so you can believe that answer, confess that answer, and then what happens? People don't get results. Because how many times have you gotten results of doing that? You're not experiencing it. And so they come next week to hear more about their conflict, maybe hear a different answer, and try a different mode, and then nothing changes. Are you tired of things not changing? If God is so glorious and powerful that when Moses said, Lord, show me your glory, and God says, I can't do that. It'll blow you off the face of this earth. But I tell you what, I'm going to put you in the cleft of this rock, and I'm going to let you see my rear end. I ain't going to let you see my front, because you will die if you see it. You ever seen that movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first one, and they opened up that? Yeah. And what happened to them? They melted. Their flesh just melted. Yeah. You know, that's what would have happened to Moses. Joshua went up there and saw a skeleton. God says, I can't do that to you. If God is that powerful and He's residing in me and I can't change some stuff, we're in trouble. Now let me say this again because this is a huge revelation. We've got to get the cart back where it needs to be, behind the horse. The greatest problem Christianity has is this. Preachers and teachers find your human conflict. Then they go find an answer. They discover the human conflict. Then they go to the Bible for the answer. They preach that answer. And they tell you to believe in that answer. Confess that answer, which is a promise. And people still don't end up getting results. And this goes on every week, every year, with no exception. No change. Now here we go. The promises. Then what are the promises for? If God never gave us the promises for Him to answer, here's my human conflict. I need to get a promise from God, and once I understand that promise, He's going to answer it. All wrong. Change that. Don't believe that no more. That's the cart before the horse. Well, if God didn't give us promises for Him to answer, then I don't understand this. And this is why it needs to be taught. The promises, according to Peter, right there on the wall, 2 Peter 1:4, right there, that banner. The promises are to make us a partaker of His divine nature. Let's go back to the beginning of my message. Christ in you. Christ in you. Not outside of you. Christ in you. The hope of glory. Not outside of you. Christ in you. We'll keep saying that till you get it. Christ in you. God is not detached from you, that He's out there, that you need to get a promise and go to Him. Christ in you. So what are the promises for? The promises are to make us partakers of His divine nature, not to bring answers to fix our humanity. That's the survival mode. That's the life, the Coast Guard coming out there and getting you. Promises are to make us partakers of His divine nature. Now, let me say this again. The promises are to make us a partaker of His divine nature, not to bring answers to fix your humanity. How many got things in your life that needs to be fixed? We're not denying that. Finances, sickness, marriage, kids, job, whatever. Deliverance. We're not denying human conflict. You're experiencing it. Jesus did not come right now, now 2,000 years ago He did, but right now He's not about fixing your human conflict. 2,000 years ago on the cross, He fixed all human conflict. Amen. Then why do I got this? Because you haven't released resurrection power. You haven't released the nature of God in you. You haven't manifested Christ in you, the hope of glory. It's your fault. It's your inability to understand who you are, where you are, what He's done. So we're in this mode of, well, I'm helpless. I need a promise. Let me go in the Bible to get it. And I'm going to say, God, your word said. Now, what's the purpose of Him in me then? You got to get this. Why is He in me if I'm still doing this? If I'm still in this old covenant mode of taking a promise and going to God and hoping that He'll send an angel down to fix it. When He's inside of me. The cross fixed all conflict. Amen. Now I'm about releasing Christ in me, because I'm not putting up with the conflict. It's already been fixed. I ain't putting up with that. I'm not asking Him to do something He's already done. I'm not trying to be somebody He's already made me to be. On the cross, He made this. He died to the world. And Paul said, I've been crucified to the world, which means this. The world, human conflict, has no relevance in my life, has no power over me. I am ruling over it. I'm crucified to it. I'm dead to all the conflict. I'm dead to it. So I can release the resurrection power of God in my life to overcome.
There you go. That's it.
That's what we are supposed to be doing. The problem in the body of Christ is we are trying to be human and asking God to fix my humanity. We are not born again human. We are born again. We're born human, but we're born again supernatural. I have to read that. So I wrote this down because I don't want to get this. I want to stay on task here. The problem in the body of Christ is we are trying to be human and asking God to fix my humanity. That's the problem. That's not a remedy. That's a problem. We are not born again human. Let that sink in. We were born human. We are not born again human. We are born again as sons of God. DNA's in. We've got God's DNA. We are children of God. We are His offspring. We are His DNA. We are manifesting ourselves as sons of God, not humans. If you see yourself as just a human, what's the difference between what's the first getting born again? I'm born again as a son of God. Born into this world as a human. I don't believe that. See, we're not literally taking these words to heart. I am a new creation. 2 Corinthians 5 tells us that. 5:17. We are a new creation. The old is over with. I am no longer that person that was human before I got saved. See, no one's telling me this. They keep talking about my human conflict. They keep telling me how bad I am. They keep telling me how the problems, everybody's going through this. You know, you're no different. Everybody else got to go through this. Who are you that you don't have to go through this? And they keep reminding me of my humanity. But they're not reminding me that I'm a son of God, that I am divinity. I'm one with the Spirit. I have resurrection power in me. I am supernatural now. I'm no longer natural. I'm supernatural. Our human condition was already complete in the death of Jesus. It's not about I have to trust God to get money. Stop this. Listen. It's not about I have to trust God to get money. Then what is it? What about money? We all need it. It's not about I have to trust God to get money. That means I'm not going to go find a promise so I can get some money from God. Oh my God, if we don't stop that, I'm done with that. It doesn't work because I still don't have money. The Bible says you're the head, not the tail. Right? So if talking about money, it's not about I have to trust God to get money. Money is supposed to be my servant. It doesn't use me. It's not my God. It doesn't make me or break me, and yet that's our mentality, because if we don't have it, what causes divorces more than anything is money. Why is that? It's supposed to be our servant, and we've made it our God. We've made it something that we have no power over. See how we're not manifesting our sonship? Let me say it again. It's not about I have to trust God to get money. Money is already my servant. It's not what we have to trust Him for. It's what obeys us. Money should be something that obeys you. Now, does that sound crazy? People step into their experience with Jesus based upon religious premises, and we all have them. But when you experience and receive Christ Jesus, He came in with all His power and His resurrection. And you know what church does? Talks you out of it. Christian television talks you out of it every day of who you are and what this whole thing's about. He unveils Himself to us. As we live and face the challenges of life, each situation should be an unveiling of Jesus, a release of His nature in us that manifests His life as our life. So He's not fixing anything. He's pouring forth the riches of His glory. This is not about what you're out there experiencing. That's secondary. Primarily, I'm experiencing the riches of His glory. And it's flowing out, fixing my humanity as I live and breathe and move. But I'm not living like that. I'm looking for conflict and asking Him to fix it. No, His nature I'm partaking of. The promises cause me to partake of His nature. That's releasing everything that's just clearing out the path. It's already fixed. I'm releasing it now. I'm trying to figure out another illustration. The emancipation of the black people. This was something Abraham Lincoln did how many years ago? And it wasn't until Martin Luther King came along and said, you know, how come we're not implementing what was already done clear back there? And they had to fight tooth and nail for their freedom and their liberty, when they should have already had that how long ago? Now that may not be exactly, might fit this, but I think it does. I think you get the picture. Is what Christ did in my life 2,000 years ago, done deal. Now I am appropriating it by partaking of His divine nature through the promises. I'm releasing Christ in my experiences because He bought and paid for that. He finished it, and by God, I'm going to experience it. So the world comes at me with poverty. The world comes at me, or the devil, with sickness. Do you think I'm going to put up with that? You need to protest. and destroy the works of the devil, because that's what Jesus came and told us that we ought to be doing. He destroyed the works of the devil, so are you and I. So is poverty a work of the devil? Is sickness a work of the devil? Is addictions and crap like that works of the devil? Then I am to destroy those. Those are not allowed in my life, because he did it. So I'm going to release the life of Christ, Christ in me, the hope of glory. I'm releasing the nature I'm partaking of into the experience, into the situation, and I'm going to experience Christ in this situation or circumstance. I'm going to show up on the field and I'm going to win. The opponent is coming at me. My opponent can be poverty. My opponent can be sickness. But I'm going to show up on that field and I'm going to score. Because I'm going to demonstrate what Christ did on the cross in my situation and circumstance. And the church isn't demonstrating squat. We're just going through poverty and sickness and depression and discouragement and all this stuff. Let me give you an example of this resurrection power. Let's say I have right now I saw on TV that they've got these tablets. This is funny. This is a survival thing, by the way. And Jim Bakker's big on it. If you ever watched his show, he's all about survival. He's got all kinds of things that he's got that you can buy to survive the tribulation or whatever crap happens in life. But they've got these tablets that you just drop these tablets. And it's not him. I don't think he has it. He's got something else going on. But there's this other group of people that are survivalists. And they've got these tablets that if you're there's no water, and you can just go to some crappy creek where dogs pee in and fish poop in and all that kind of stuff, and just take this contaminated glass of water and put this stuff in there, shake it up, and it's 100% clean. And you can drink it. Even if it's a cesspool, you know, cleans it. Cleans it. Because that's the only place there's going to be water. From what they tell me. I'm sure one day that might happen. But now think about this. I can take a contaminated glass of water and put these tablets in it, right? And clean it up. Or I can put the cup down and get a 5-gallon bucket of crystal clear water and pour over top of that. What happens? Automatically flushes it out, right? Christ in you, the hope of glory. Don't focus on the contamination. That's why I never get people to focus on their sin. Why? Like you're going to do something about it? Focus on the resurrection of Jesus, the power of God in you, Christ in you, the hope of glory. You focus on Christ, guess what? The sin's going to be taken care of. Transformation, new drives, new desires, the whole thing. I don't focus on your ability to do anything. I focus on what he's already done, partake of his divine nature. So as Christ unveils himself, as we understand this relationship, we strip off all the human perspective and say, God, it's not about me, it's about what you did in your Son. Strip all that off. So in a marriage, he crucified all conflict. Not divorce. In a marriage, before it gets to divorce, you got to recognize he crucified all conflict. Why do I have it? Because you're not dead to it. You haven't realized he died to all human conflict. Why are you still in it? Why are you delving into it? Every bit of strife, every bit of enmity, he died to. And he died, I died. He died to the world and everything in it, so did I. So those have no power over me. I fix the conflict. I don't enter it. I overcome it. I don't become it. So the strife, the envy, the conflict. Sickness, all disease has been paid for by the sacrifice of Jesus. So let's say someone gets sick. And they say, I'm standing on the promises and nothing is happening. Has that been your experience? I'm sick. I'm standing on the promises and yet I'm still sick. Or I need money and I'm standing on the promises and they just took my car. I'm losing my house, whatever. And you get mad at God and you feel like, God, did you just let me down? Because I didn't see you move. But that's the mode. I have a conflict. I find the promise. I stand on that promise, and nothing happens. What about the intimacy with the person of Jesus Christ? Wouldn't it be better to have the nature of the healer than to try to get healed? All triers are liars. You can't try. I'm trying to get healed. Well, what are you doing? I'm standing on the promises. It's wrong. It's backwards. It's not right. You have the nature of the healer in you. You're not trying to get healed. So if the nature of the healer is within you, I don't need an outside promise in the Bible that I've got to take to God. There's that detachment thing. I'm looking at, I've got the healer in me. Wait a minute, what am I doing being sick? I've got the healer in me. And the promises are to show me what to partake of. So he's the God that healeth thee. I'm not grabbing that promise and confessing it to get healed. That promise is for me to recognize he's my healer, right? Where's he at? Inside of me. So he not be, remember the pipe, does not the pipe get wet as the water flows through? Doesn't the pipe, so in other words, if Christ is in me as a healer, shouldn't I be healed before I start talking about healing to other people? Or praying for other people? I should be healed myself. But what's happening is we're not getting wet. And somehow we're talking. And so when we pray, honestly, what's your record on prayer? Praying for people getting healed? 1 in 6? I prayed for 6, 1 got healed. Or 1 in 10, 1 in 20. Hell, it's 0 in 50. I haven't even saw anybody get healed yet. That's a pretty pathetic team, isn't it? They ain't demonstrating anything on the field. So we're surviving sickness. We're not overcoming it. We're going to the doctor and we're surviving it. I'm not overcoming depression. I'm taking pills to survive it, to deal with it. This is where we are today. I'm not getting rich. I'm on welfare. So we're just dealing with the problem. We're out in the ocean and we're happy being on that life preserver. Because God is not delivering me. I'm dealing with my sickness. I'm putting up with my poverty. And I'm dealing with my addiction. I'm in a survival mode. See, if we get so focused on the event, we believe a promise has a time before the manifestation. But what if promise, according to Peter, we're partakers of his divine nature, is what we're saying there, that through these exceedingly great and precious promises, what if the Scripture says this, by his stripes we're healed, brings me the nature of the healer. So it's not about me getting healed, it's about the nature of the healer manifesting through me and delivering the oppressed, setting liberty them that are bound. Does that make sense? But you got to concentrate on this, because the minute you leave here and watch anybody, hear anybody, they're going to reverse this. And you're going to be right back into grabbing a promise, that detachment mode of grabbing a promise and going to God with it in your hand. What about this, God? And he's inside of you. Resurrection power is inside of you, waiting to be released into your experience so you can win the game. For God to demonstrate who he is in you in that situation or circumstance. It's about the life that flows out of us. And the church as a whole is not how God designed it. The doctrines, the teachings, it's not how God designed it. We've got it backwards. Let me just close with this. How do I face 2015? Same way I faced 2014? God, I hope not. I hope we've learned something in 2014. That we don't face 2015 with the same mentality and the same belief system. I hope we're growing in the knowledge of him. And if we're not, then I'm not doing my job. I don't want to face 2015 with the same mentality I've faced the other years with. What's my posture? How do I face, or how do I get out of the season I'm in if God's waiting for me to look to Him and quit trying in my own flesh and my own self? I want out of the season that I'm in. I got to tell you, I got to get out of it real soon here. I don't know how many more laps around the mountain or whatever He's got, but I want to get through it as fast as I can. So I've got to change the way I think. I got to at least keep seeking God for Him to change how I feel and how I see things. So how do I face 2015? How do I shift things in my season? How do I get through a crisis? I don't know. You may have a crisis coming up this year. I don't know. You may be in one. So how do I do this? Answer is in Christ. You do it in Christ. That's the answer. Do you realize that if this is true, and it is, 98% of Christian television is not needful. This message puts them out of business if they don't know this. I'd like to see, I don't need you anymore. I used to be out in the ocean. I used to be on that line. I don't need you anymore. I'm ruling and reigning. I don't need a survivor message. I'm ruling and reigning now. I know an individual, God's truth, that has been in counseling for 10 years. And they are worse. I'd love to tell you who it is. They are worse than they've ever been. And that's not condemnation. That is an observation and almost a cry. Oh my God, do you not realize 10 years you have been in counseling? Now, they don't live around here. This is somebody that lives out of state. And I hear the stuff that they do because they are part of my used-to-be family. And I'm hearing the stuff this person is doing and being. And I know this person real well. Spent several hours on the phone with them in the past. And I know their life personally. And I'm telling you, really? 10 years of counseling and you are worse than you've ever been. And it almost makes me think, and it's a possibility, this is a habitual liar. It makes me even think, probably they're not even in counseling. Because I want to say to that person, you are wasting your money. That person is not a good doctor. And it makes me think, possibly they're not even in counseling. But my whole point in saying that is, we're like that person. We keep going to these guys on TV. You keep coming to church every Sunday, and nothing is changing, and you need that message. I'm not going to give that message much here. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to give you a survival message. Not you, because you got a couple new people here, but I'm saying for those who've been with me long enough, we got to graduate from the survival message. We got to start ruling and reigning. I don't want to be that guy out in that life preserver waiting, or just, I guess this is how it's always going to be. I want change. And if a crisis comes in 2015, I want to release the life of Christ, the nature of Christ on that thing and blow it up. I don't want to work to try to fix it. I don't want to look for keys, secrets, and promises. I'm releasing God on the scene. Let me tell you how that works. Jesus is in you, right? Now, read the Gospels with this new lens on. Go through the Gospels this week and read every time He showed up, He released His nature and, I mean, fixed everything around and about Him. Cast out demons. He even when He showed up, the dead got raised. He was just releasing His virtue. Remember the woman says, if I touch his blue jeans, if I just touch his pants, I touch the hem of his garment. She says, if I just touch that, I know if I could just touch that, I'd get healed. Remember that story? He's walking, and he stops and goes, wait a minute, who just touched me? And they said, God, Jesus, everybody's touching you. What do you mean who touched you? They're all, No. He says, I just felt virtue leave me. That's huge.
That is huge.
I felt power, not virtue, power. Power just got released from me, and I didn't do it. And when the woman realized she was healed, she came forward and said it was me. I just got healed. Now think about this. Talk about disconnect or detachment. In the Old Covenant, because Jews still under the Old Covenant, this woman touches the hem of his garment. Power leaves him and dries up that issue of blood that she had for how many years? Dried it up. Power dried it up. Now you're telling me that same Jesus living inside of me and I can't release some stuff? Something's wrong. It's the message. We have adopted a false message today, guys. We honestly have. We've adopted the religious message. It's a detachment message, and we don't know who we are in Christ, or we don't know the power of God. We know nothing about what Christ did on the cross because we've got it backwards. Maybe we do, but they don't know. I'm not saying us so much. Let me end with this hope. This is huge. Malcolm Smith, this is what's interesting. I was watching TBN, back last summer, and they were doing classics on TBN. So this must have been like 1978, 1979. Paul Crouch was interviewing, and it was huge because you never see this guy ever on TBN, Malcolm Smith. And he was real young. And they showed it, and I had taped it, and when I saw him, I went, oh my God, it's a younger Malcolm. And he made this statement, and I wrote it down. He was telling Paul Crouch, he said, New Testament hope is more described as hope in what God is doing inside of me and what He will undoubtedly bring me into before He returns. And that hope, he says, is glory. So I've been working on this message, and then he brings this. He talks about the blessed. See, he says the church has thought of the blessed hope. Now he's talking about the word hope as Jesus' return. And then what he said, or maybe it was somebody else, but it goes along with this, that Jesus is not going to do any more today than he will do when he returns. What do you think? All of a sudden, more people are going to get healed when he returns? See, we get this mentality when Jesus comes, he'll fix everything. He already came. And he's living inside of you. And you are his body, and we ought to be fixing everything. In fact, implementing he already fixed the humanity. We just need to be releasing him. Yeah, I don't know. Are you getting this? I don't need God to fix my finances. He already fixed them. I just need to release Christ into my finances. What he did on the cross is being released. Not God's like, and we want to know why it's not, our prayers aren't being answered. Let me say it again. Hope is more described as, in the New Testament, Greek, hope is more described as hope in what God is doing inside of me and what he will undoubtedly bring me into before he returns. That's my hope. And that's a glorious hope. So I hope you get this. And I'm not going to, I would never do anyway, but I'm being facetious now, but I'm not going to pray for you.
I have something to share right when you're...
Okay. I'm going to, there's no praying. See, here's something we've got to stop doing. Praying for the sick. We've got to start healing the sick. I mean, maybe you got it backwards. Maybe you don't, but I know they do. The church does. But I pray for something that's already been done. No, I'm going to declare and decree. So if I'm talking to somebody and they're sick, and I'm sitting there, maybe I'm on the phone with them, or I'm sitting, I've even done this texting. Someone will text me something. about their sickness, and I'll just text. They'll say, pray for me. And I'll say, I'm not going to pray. I'll pray right now through texting. I can pray through texting. And I said, I decree that blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to, oh God, would you come? I know you're up there somewhere. Would you come? And would you do what you said in the Bible that you would do? Maybe I'm being funny. I'll laugh at this later, but oh my, this is just killing me. You don't understand how this kills me. That I got to hear this all the time on TV and among my own people at times. And I got to say, oh man, God, they're not getting it. I'm not going to pray for you. I will pray for my finances. Oh my God, if I hear that again. No, what I'm going to do is pray that the eyes of your understanding would be open to who you are in Christ and the riches of His glory, and that when He died and He became poor, you would become rich. And now I'm going to pray that God opens your eyes so you can know who's inside of you to release into your finances the riches of Christ Jesus. But I'm not going to pray that somebody gives you a check. I'm going to pray you know how to do this yourself. Remember, finances are to serve you. We're not praying God fix my finances. I'm praying how open my eyes so I can see money as my servant that obeys me. It comes when I says come. It goes when I say go. And we're not there yet. What if I told you that, okay, for instance, Paul, am I going over? I don't know what time, how long I've been doing this. Let me just say this. When Paul says that God shall supply all my needs, what if the needs aren't being met? Have you had that in your life? Things dried up, God ain't meeting your needs, so God lied. Paul lied, God lied, Scripture's not true. What's going on? There's a disconnect. I'm going to tell you, it is that we've got it backwards. I don't want to hear I don't want to do this no more because it doesn't work. I have to be honest with you. It's not working. Traditional Christianity, the message, isn't working. It's not working in your life. It's not working in my life. And it's not working in anybody else's life. The only ones that's working is the faith teachers whose offering plate is the world. And how many times I told you that? If I was on TV and I had millions of people watching me, most of my needs gets fixed with money. You know that. And if my offering plate was the world, I'd have a lot of things fixed right now. And it doesn't work for them. It's just they got a lot of money. So if I've got to say that it works for them, I've got to say it works for Donald Trump. What's the difference between a faith teacher who has the world as his offering plate and Donald Trump? They're flying around in jet planes. They get to eat organic food. I can't afford organic food. They get to go to real nice restaurants. I got to go through a McDonald's drive-thru. What's wrong with me that I don't have a jet plane? What's wrong with me that I'm driving around a car with 170,000 miles on it? What's wrong with me? Huh? I don't know. I better stop because I'm going to get myself in trouble. Because if I could really say what I want to say, it's just too crude and it's just not polite, and it's just not, you know. It's worthless to say. But I think you get the picture, or you get the point of what I'm trying to convey here. And but I think it's time that, well, Paul said it, that we ought to be teachers by now. To be a teacher means you're already ruling and reigning. We don't need to keep being students. We need to learn this and then teach it to others. Because that's the Great Commission, not to save people. It's to disciple people. That means you teach them about Jesus, what He's done on the cross, this, that, and the other. There's just a lot to say here. Heavenly Father, I pray that you give us the ability to comprehend this. Because the message, traditional Christianity, the message today, it's backwards, God. And Paul even called it backwards. When in Galatians 1 he said it's perverted. Perverted in the Greek means backwards. They've perverted the gospel. They've made it backwards. They've made it about law. They've made it about steps, secrets, keys. They've made it about a detached God. And Paul said that's perverting the gospel. They don't get it. They don't understand it. They're preaching the gospel with an old covenant mentality. And Paul says that's a perversion of the gospel. And again, perverted means backwards. If we can just switch it, and the only way we can, God, is by revelation. By a revelation, we can switch this. We can turn it around. And we walk and we live from the inside out, not from the outside in. We are partakers of your divine nature. And the promises were given to show us. The promises are Christ. They're not even separate from Him. The Word, in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word is Jesus, and the promises are the Word. So the promises are Jesus, and He's living inside of us. I don't grab something that I've already became. I'm partaking of healing. I'm partaking of riches. I'm partaking of sanctification. I'm partaking of deliverance. And I'm releasing that into my life. God is no longer on the outside of us trying to get in. He got in. He's just trying to get out now by manifesting who He is in your situation and circumstance. Let Him do it. It's that easy. Let Him do it. Walk out of that POW camp. The door's open and there's no enemy around. What are you still living in that hut for? Go back home. Get up and move out of your addiction. Get up and move away from that unforgiveness. It has no power over you. Move on in the newness that God is bringing you into. No longer being a slave, but recognizing that we are a son. I'm not living in the slave's headquarters. I'm living by being seated in heavenly places with Christ Jesus. Now, whether it's people here this morning or those listening on the internet, there are people in a crisis right now. There are people dealing with addictions. There are people in a divorce situation right now. There are people that can't pay their bills right now. Now take this message, get a revelation of it, listen to it over and over and over again, and begin to release the nature of God in your situation and circumstances. Don't ask God to fix it. Release Him. It's already fixed on the cross. Now manifest that. He already did the work. Now let it come through and let His power, release His power on your situation and circumstance. Resurrection power abides in you. Now release the power in your divorce. Release the power in your finances. Release the power over your sickness. Release the power in that addiction and walk away from it. You don't need anybody's help. You have the nature of the healer in you. You have the nature of the provider in you. You have the nature of the deliverer in you. You don't need a man or a woman to help you. You have Christ in you, the hope of glory. Now release Him. He's waiting to be released, and He's waiting to come on the scene of your situation and circumstance. Rest. Quit working to try to fix it. It's already fixed. Don't try to fix it. Trying is you doing it outside of Christ. Rather, release what you have received. And next week, we'll talk about that. So, Father, I pray that you open our eyes and our understanding. This is a huge paradigm shift, God, and it just doesn't happen overnight. We desperately need the anointing to open our eyes and teach us this. This is the new covenant. This is the finished work. And this is how we walk from it. This is how we walk out of it. This is the day that you have made. This is a glory. We ought to be seeing each day as a day of glory, a day of you revealing yourself, unveiling yourself in our situations and circumstances. These are not ordinary days that we live in. This is what the traditional church has molded us into, just getting by. No, this is a day of glory that the earth is filled with. Your glory has filled the earth. And we need to open our eyes to it. Not the darkness that discourages us. We don't want to open our eyes to the deep darkness that depresses us, but we want to have our eyes open to the glory of God that's filling this earth. We are that glory, waiting to be manifested to this earth. Amen. You know, we're between a rock and a hard place. The earth is full of His glory because the church is here. But if the church doesn't recognize that Christ in us is the hope of glory, it's our responsibility to release that glory. That's how the glory is in this earth, is through you and me. So we start with our personal lives. Release the glory of God in your personal lives. Then you go and release it in the other people's lives. Like Peter walking by the gate called Beautiful. They had that guy. He said, "Do you have any money?" He said, "No, I got something. I've got no money, but I've got power." And he raised that guy up. But you first have to experience that glory. Remember, the pipe gets wet as it's releasing the water, and that glory ought to be manifesting in every area of your life as it is being released into the lives of others and in situations and circumstances. And I'm going to stop. God bless you. See you next week.